I see familiar faces, right? There are two faces I remember. You knew, right?
I've been here before.
You haven't been there for a while, though.
Approximately 4 years, but I've been here before.
Yeah, I know the face well, too. However, after you finish your work, and we're having hopefully we'll be having some light refreshments in the spirit of Christmas. We can get to find it exactly who is here. Thank you very much for coming in. Hope I didn't detain you too much. This is our last press conference, well, in the absence of anything dramatic happening for the year. And we expect next year, God willing, that we'll continue our bi-weekly press conference. Today's press conference will take a very simple format. I'll address 2 or 3 issues with you and then give you the opportunity. I suspect that you've come with a few questions, so I'll be able to address that on the end of that note. We are now less than 2 weeks or 2 weeks at the end of the year. So there are a couple of issues I want to raise with you. I was away from office for the last week in Tobago. I was in Parliament yesterday. I've come back here this morning. So I can advise you that if you may recall, I did lead a delegation to the President's House on the 20th of November. And in that delegation were members of what we call the round table, where we did ask the President to invoke his powers under Section 81 of the Constitution. And we specifically asked him to do that in the context of the proclamation of Clause 34 of the Administration of Justice Indictable Proceedings Act of 2011. And we asked the President to ask the Prime Minister to furnish His Excellency with information in respect of all the circumstances surrounding the early proclamation by the government of Section 34 of the said Act. Well, I have received correspondence from His Excellency, and he has informed me that he, on the 7th of December, did write to the Prime Minister under Section 81 of the Constitution. So that matter is now there with the Prime Minister, required to respond to the President under Section 81 of the Constitution. There's something else that I would like to raise. You may recall at a public meeting, we had a round of public meetings a few months ago, starting in St. James. And at that meeting, we took issue with the crime statistics as published. And we indicated that the police website had been closed down subsequent to an article by Kevin Singh, who had pointed out certain concerns. The website was shut down, and the figures being made available from official sources were not in keeping with the tally that we were observing. And we did say so at a public meeting in St. James. We continue to monitor these things, and we believe that there's something here which is not right or not accurate. Because as of today, the official figures for murders or killings, let's call them killings, stand at 367. That's the official figure. And when one compares that with last year, we expect that there'll be all kinds of chest thumping and praising and whatever misrepresentations by government spokespersons. But the bottom line is, even that figure is no improvement than last year's. But more interestingly, I'm going to supply you this morning with this list, which is a list of all the reported killings in Trinidad and Tobago from the 1st of January to today. And those killings were suspicious deaths. We have names, dates, and remarks as to how the person is supposed to have been killed as reported. And the figure that we have as of today is 406, which is vastly different to the official figure of 367. So the concerns that we raised in June, I think it was, where we were seeing this gap between the reported killings and suspicious deaths and the official figures continue, and that the gap seems to be widening. And we expect that against this background we will hear all kinds of misinformation from those who seem to think that official accurate statistics are not important to the population. In fact, in the intervening period between that public meeting in St. James and today, we had the Minister of National Security attempting to instruct the police not to give the public information with respect to these figures. Of course, he did in fact retract that and pretended not to have attempted to do so. But this is something that the public needs to pay attention to, because these statistics are just not just ordinary numbers. They have value, and they are of concern to many citizens who are influenced by these numbers. But more interestingly, the website did come back up, and while the figures as published in the general media indicate 406, and the official stated figures of recent times indicate 367, if you go on the website speaks only to 331. So I don't know what is going on here, but clearly attempts are being made to minimize the seriousness and the ongoing spate of killings in Trinidad and Tobago in the face of no real effective response from the state in ameliorating or reducing or eliminating the murders that are taking place. And while that is happening, the government's response in the form of a crime plan or an incipient crime plan or no crime plan, the government's response continues to be a series of make work and support programs and vacuous statements from the minister and the lesser functionaries. So we are very concerned that we are going into 2013, worse off than we were in 2012, and we see no light at the end of the tunnel, but we are spending huge sums of money directing significant effort to the problem, and we're not making any significant progress. Another matter which I want to touch on very briefly is a matter which came to us by way of an article in Jamaica. We are a member of CARICOM, and the CARICOM newspaper carried an editorial, which we all read, and they purported to comment on the situation in Trinidad and Tobago. To the best of my knowledge, Trinidad and Tobago's editorials and scribes have commented ad nauseum on the business of our other CARICOM states. And we took note of the government's reaction, which was quite embarrassingly unnecessary, and in some cases bordering on the obscene. We had the Minister of National Security demanding of a Jamaican newspaper to expose to him the name of the person who wrote the editorial, I presume, so that he could verify the person, as he does in Trinidad and Tobago. Of course, the Jamaicans ignored him. But the point is, there are things happening in Trinidad and Tobago which we should not bury our heads in the sand about. And it would be good for us in Trinidad and Tobago to season our issues with a modicum of truth. Because if we do that, then a lot of the issues we have will be manageable and digestible. There's no gainsaying the fact that the political arena in Trinidad and Tobago has political organizations that have their political bases. One, if you look at the PNM and its history and its growth and its support, you will see the PNM is largely supported on election day by the urban populations in Trinidad and Tobago. And those populations are to be found largely in the east-west corridor, the capital city, San Fernando, Point Fortin, Rima, and so on. And these urbanized centers, given our history, are largely centers populated by Afro-Trinidadians in our population. The other political party, which is in competition with PNM, is a political party that has its origin in the sugar trade union movement. That's where the UNC or the UNFDDLP came from. And the rural populations, which again, according to our history, you will find the majority of those persons in those areas are of Indo-Trinidad origin. And therefore, from that origin, two major political parties have as their base support the different ethnic groups. No political party in this country sets out to campaign on the basis of wanting support only from its ethnic support. We try to reach out to all the population, and we, on election day, take the results that we get. Speaking as a PLM leader, we can say with pride that the PLM since 1956 has contested every single election in every nook and cranny in Trinidad and Tobago, regardless of the nature of its demography. But we can only campaign, and we take the results as voted upon by the electorate. So we do have that as our starting point. And of course, when you come into office, it is reasonable to expect that the persons who you know, or who you're familiar with, or who you work with, or who you advance, are the persons who you will put in your administration, because this is what you held out to the country. Elect these candidates to be the government. Some of them are local government candidates or general election candidates, and of course, those who work around you, you put on board and so on. So we should not be too upset about somebody on the outside pointing to us that we have ethnic considerations in Trinidad and Tobago. What we have to be concerned about is that the governance of the country is based on equal opportunity. That's what you have to be concerned about. And when I saw the reaction of the government spokespersons seeking to denigrate and to even attack a color, an individual in Jamaica, I have a statement here which I will give you, because we in the opposition will comment to it, and the statement is this: that the PNM has always and will always continue to be committed to providing opportunities for education, employment, and all social benefits to all of our citizens, regardless of race, religion, or political affiliation. In a small country like ours, we can ill afford to put out to pasture or remove from positions that are key to the development of the country individuals who have attained their particular status through qualifications, experience, and merit. A country will be seeking disaster if the political administration undertakes a strategy of appointing key persons without reference to the best choice available, but influenced by some other overriding consideration. The future prosperity of Trinidad and Tobago, after this period of stagnation and reduction of our per capita GDP, will depend almost exclusively not only on oil and natural gas, but on the excellence of its governance, entrepreneurship, and brain power. All citizens must be conscious of this fact and take note of appointments into key positions that are neither transparent nor based on the best available qualifications, experience, and expertise. There are several examples which are worrisome. The Chief Executive of NGC, NEC, FIU, TMTech, Governor of the Central Bank, and the highest positions at UTT are but a few examples that have created some concerns in the eyes of several citizens. The PNM makes a commitment not to follow this pattern and revert to the original policy of equal opportunity for all. I want to draw your attention to a few things that happened. You may recall what happened with the FIU, where the Prime Minister, who is leading the charge against the Jamaican comment, the Prime Minister personally intervened to override an independent service commission so that a handpicked person could be head of the FIU, even when the process had thrown up someone who was better qualified. Because one of the comments made in the Jamaican article had to do not only with ethnicity, but with competence. And the Prime Minister, in that particular case of the FIU, overrode competence as determined by a transparent process and supported and vetoed to allow an illegal, improper process which originated to be in the end confirmed. You may recall that we got up one morning, and up to now, nobody in this country knows how the general manager of TNTech was removed. All we were told is that the board called him into a room, gave him his marching orders, and he was made persona non grata. He left TNTech, and he was replaced by somebody else. We have serious question marks about the competence of the people at NGC and NEC as not being the best available to Trinidad and Tobago. We heard a minister of government saying to another minister that her removal from office in one ministry to another ministry was good punishment for the fact that she had kept P&M people in position in a key ministry like the Ministry of Energy, where expertise comes at great cost and patience. And specific names were called of persons who should have been removed for their political longevity. We saw in the Central Bank the appointment of a governor, where a deputy governor who served 2 terms as deputy governor with distinction was not even considered for the position. And much to our chagrin, we are now hearing that such a person has now decided to leave the bank and possibly leave the country. We have seen at UTT the appointment of a provost. And those of you who know, well, you probably will know, the provost is supposed to be the highest ranking academic by record and performance in a university. A person to whom other academics will look up to by virtue of being of superior performance. We have seen at UTT a provost appointed who, to my information, is a person who couldn't properly compete for and obtain a job as an assistant lecturer in UWI. And these are the kinds of things that would cause people to comment in the way that the Jamaican commentator did. And for the government and its spokespersons to behave the way they're behaving as though these comments are in fact arriving from Mars with absolutely no basis. What we say to the government is that if the government believes that there's absolutely no basis for the Jamaican comments, that the government could ask the Equal Opportunity Commission to show us all the senior persons, we could just confine ourselves to the senior or medium persons, who have been removed since 2010 and who have been replaced, and then we'll see whether in fact there's any basis for anyone in or out of Trinidad and Tobago to be concerned that this kind of development could be taking place in Trinidad and Tobago. And even as we have had the experience, you remember, I had to write to the Public Service Commission and virtually carry on a fight to force the Commission to acknowledge that the appointment of, what's her name? The other lady was Miss Austin. The Commission did not even pay attention to the fact that the Attorney General had told the Parliament that the Cabinet had appointed Ms. Franco. We took issue in the Parliament pointing out that it was wrong and it was illegal. The government tried to browbeat us. We forced the Public Service Commission to seek senior counsel advice and to be advised that it was the Public Service Commission that had the legal authority to appoint the head of that FIU. The Commission then intervened. The government got the Commission to allow them to let Ms. Franco remain in office until the process was completed by the Commission. And when the process was completed, the Prime Minister vetoed Ms. Austin and Ms. Franco kept the job. Now that we took objection to publicly, and it was an issue in this country and remains an issue. You would think that the government would have learned from that. And even as there are comments coming to us from Jamaica, and the government is fulminating and behaving in the most vulgar manner in response to an individual over which they have no control, they are doing the same thing again. I draw your attention to an article which appeared most innocently in the Newsday on December 1st, where it is reported that, let me quote for you what it says. It says, Michelle Otley Jones, legal officer of the National Security Ministry, said the ministry has already selected a director and deputy director for the counter-trafficking unit, who are expected to assume duties next month, because we are hoping the legislation could be proclaimed by that time. What is going on? This piece of legislation, Act number 14 of 2011, is a piece of legislation to give effect to the United Nations Protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in persons, especially women and children, and is meant to supplement the United Nations Convention against Transnational Organized Crime. It's called Act number 14 of 2011. In this act, which was assented to in June of 2011, but to the best of my information as I speak to you, has not been proclaimed. And even as we are being told on December 1st by a spokesperson for the Ministry of National Security, the act has not been proclaimed, but the ministry has sourced and have selected persons to operate the act. But what does the act say? If you go to part 3, the counter-trafficking unit, which we are told is now staffed by a director and deputy director, you will find that the act permits the government to either, the act permits the Public Service Commission to appoint a person as a public officer or an officer on contract. For that to happen, we would expect that these positions would be advertised. To the best of our knowledge, we've seen no advertisement for these positions. However, information coming to us tells us that a Miss Gandhi and a Mr. Rampersad, one from immigration, one from the AG's office, are the people referred to in that article in the Newsday of December 1st. The law specifically points out that the director and deputy director of the counter-trafficking unit shall be persons who possess a combination of qualifications and experience in international relations, management, law, or security. The persons who have been appointed to the position as told to us on December 1st. I would like the government to tell us when were these positions advertised,